Good morning, and welcome to Edmonds Lutheran Church this morning as we gathered for our day-to-day with Dementia class. Glad you're here, and we want to begin. I'd like to start off like this to let you know I'm not a perfect person, and I'm still learning and growing in all things. And we had a really big event here last week where we broke ground on our affordable housing, and I totally forgot to do the most important thing that day in front of a lot of people to do our land acknowledgement. And so we want to begin with our land acknowledgement today. So Edmonds Lutheran Church gratefully acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral homeland and waterways of the Lashute-Seed-speaking Coast Salish peoples who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. Their strong and long-held ethic of respect for and preservation of land, waterways, and wildlife endures. As we seek to understand our place in the history of this land and its people, we commit to truth-telling, lest we forget on whose land we gather and worship. We commit to the ongoing care of this sacred land, and with honor and respect for our Indigenous contemporaries, their ancestors, and their descendants. We commit to the ongoing work of healing, reconciliation, and strengthening relationships with our Coast Salish neighbors. It's good to recognize where we are. And we are here, and I'm glad that you've gathered together for this important subject to help our communities be healthier. Our mission and vision here is to help bring healing and participate in the healing and hope in our community and world. And so this is one piece of that mission, that we can be helpful by loving our neighbors in really important ways and loving our loved ones and family members. So welcome, and glad that you have taken the time to do this. And so we're excited to welcome Anne with us this morning to teach us and help us grow together. So please welcome Anne.
I don't need.
There we go.
I'm very position.
That was our first.
I'm very sorry. I realized I can't see it. Hi, I'm Annie Jacobson, and I've been doing work in dementia for 15 plus years. It matters to me. I have my own father, is probably about 7-8 years in on his journey with both Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. My grandmother had dementia. I've worked with seniors for 20 years. What I love and what inspires me to talk to other people is that it doesn't all have to be hard. It doesn't all have to be sad. There are a lot of ways to connect in dementia, to have times of delight, to still feel engaged with that person, and to care for ourselves, because this is really hard. This is really hard. How many of you have a loved one who currently has dementia? If you don't, you're going to know somebody soon. It's kind of everywhere. So if you have friends, if you have your personal experiences, I actually was sharing a home with my mom and dad after a situation of mine in 2017, as my dad started to decline. I've got this expertise, I've got this knowledge about how to work with dementia. There were two of us, and we were still exhausted and confused and scared and tired and short-tempered and all limiting our lives. And there were two of us, somebody with extensive dementia knowledge, and it was hard. So I get questions about 3 times a week, leads from friends like Lisa, different ways saying, I'm at the end of my rope, or what do I do? So I just want to start bringing this information to the community, and thankfully Tim and Sydney worked this out for me to come here, and if this is valuable, there's next tier information we can go into another time. There's repeats of this if you have friends who would like to attend. So this is just my service to the community. So thank you all for being here. Again, my name's Annie, and we're going to go day to day with dementia. And I'm going to talk, if you'll go to the first slide, Mom. First of all, understanding the changing brain. This is where I see a lot of people get kind of an aha. And it looks like some of our screens are going to go in and out, but I think we'll be good. Gets an aha and, oh wow, that's why I'm experiencing these changes. The second part will be understanding what the person with the changing brain is seeing, understanding how they're able to engage with the world, what's going on for them. And then the third part is adjusting how we can be with that, understanding how we can best show up for ourselves and for our loved one. Okay, so down arrow. There we go. Okay, so the first part is understanding the changing brain, and I have to shout out to my fabulous master gardener mother. The flower photos you'll see are all from her garden. So next slide, please. And does everybody have a packet? We have extras. Anybody not have one? Okay, great. Tim, if people come in late, there's a couple more here. Okay, so first of all, in dementia, I'm going to put this down so it doesn't confuse me. Dementia is an umbrella term. A lot of people say, oh, he doesn't have dementia, he has Alzheimer's. Actually, dementia is the term for the symptoms. It means that one or more of our standard functions of the way we engage in the world are going away for us. We're losing the ability to do those, enough that they affect our daily life and that they are not temporary. If you have an unexpected hospitalization and you've got lots of medications and you didn't know why you were there, you may have a few days of confusion, word loss, but then you'll get better. With dementia, you don't get better. So, as the slide says, memory, other thinking abilities, language, executive functioning, which we'll talk about, all of those things are likely to change, or some of the things that can change. Alzheimer's is the primary cause of dementia. It's the one we've all heard about for years and years. And a lot of what I speak to is specifically Alzheimer's, but conceptually it relates to all the different dementias. Does anyone in here, your loved one, have a diagnosis that is not Alzheimer's?
Mine is frontotemporal.
Frontotemporal,
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that's significant with frontotemporal, that's where our impulse control is. That's where I shouldn't say that, I'm in a church, or all of those things are in the front, and frontotemporal is often a pretty significant personality change, more than some of the other dementias. So, and if we want to talk specifically later, we sure can, okay? Lewy body, they're finding, is the second most common form of dementia. It was misdiagnosed for years, and even in the last 3 to 5 years, this is changing specifically. And Lewy body can often be paired with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So you can have Parkinson's, Parkinsonian dementia with Lewy, or just Lewy. But those often go together. And if you guys have specific questions on any of these, we can delve into the specific types later. But at least understanding dementia is the term for the symptoms, and the Alzheimer's, Lewy are the cause of those symptoms. So understanding the changing brain. First of all, it's both chemical, hormonal, and structural. Okay? So your hormones change. You get testosterone flushes more readily and less dopamine flushes, less of the happy, the oxytocin is harder to access in a dementia brain. It's just what's changing chemically. Structurally, we'll see some slides in a minute on that. One of the things that happens a lot in dementia, and boy, we had this with my dad in his early to mid dementia, is something they call showtime. Does that alone make sense to anybody? Does it seem like, oh, I know what that is? When somebody with dementia, and we'll talk about, they're just trying to keep themselves safe. And we'll get into a little more detail about that. But when somebody is going to see somebody new for the first time, or maybe the husband saying, kids, it's really changed with mom, it's getting really hard. The kids come over and mom's great. She's just like herself for the 2-hour visit. And when they leave, she crashes. So what happens with showtime is this brain's trying to keep them safe, and they want to look good. So they burn all their fuel, they put everything forward. And then there's a drain afterward. So if you're taking your loved one for a doctor's visit, I don't mean this cruelly, but please schedule it in the late afternoon. Take them to lunch in a busy restaurant. Don't have them be fresh and bright in the morning because the doctor isn't going to see what they need to see to understand what's going on. That person needs to be more in their day-to-day, almost their more tired way for the doctor to get the data they need when they see them. Because without that, if you show up first thing in the morning freshly dressed, they're going to have all their fuel and they're going to want to look good for this doctor. And that isn't going to serve the need to get the information for this doctor to support you both. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I really don't mean that to be cruel, but it is the way to get the supports we need. Also, perception and behavioral changes. And we'll again get into that a little bit more. There's something called anosognosia. That's this picture of an apple. Anorexics and schizophrenics both get this a lot. It is the brain's inability to self-reflect. So everybody outside can see that you're bone thin, but you look in the mirror and literally your brain does not see that. It sees something different. In dementia, that often occurs as well, not with everybody. But there are people that aren't in denial. Their brain cannot see that putting the shoe in the refrigerator and the keys in the microwave, so they don't see that there's a problem with what they're doing they're doing, okay? That's a tricky form of dementia, a tricky symptom of dementia to work with. And something that we can definitely address, but when somebody has no self-awareness, my father, which I'll keep using as an example today, knew he was missing things. He turned over his keys the day that he had trouble finding his way home. And I know driving and bathing are two of the biggest questions I get.
Yes.
Okay, so how do I get them to bathe and how do I get them to stop driving? We are so grateful my dad said, I shouldn't be doing that anymore. And we didn't have that fight personally. So that's anosognosia, if you can't even reflect that there's a problem. Aphasia is a different thing. It's the loss of words. You're having trouble finding the right words for things. So let's go in a little deeper. Next slide. And click again. So different areas of the brain have different jobs. On your copies, you won't see the red area here in the brain. Those are what we call the amygdala. And this is like you're looking at the back of the brain, if you're looking at something this way, that's what you're seeing, so left and right. And the red is the big part of what we want to talk about. Click again, please. Click again. There we go. And there's a nice mnemonic here. On the left, you lose language, logic, executive function. We'll go a bit more into some details of executive function. But how you get through your day, how you get dressed in the morning, how you make toast, those things are all executive functioning, planning for an appointment, knowing what you do first, second, third. So all of that's on the left, and that's where most dementias, definitely Alzheimer's, lose mass, lose functionality very early on. Click again, please. On the right, we retain. So the right side isn't damaged as early on in the disease. That's where there's rhythm. Have you ever heard that music is great for people with dementia? This is why. Emotion is on that side of the brain. Our feelings, our ups and downs. Also, social norms and behaviors. I had a woman who couldn't dress herself. I worked in memory cares. I had a woman who couldn't dress herself. She had no idea what day, year, season, anything it was. But anytime somebody new would walk in, she would say, "Hi, good morning, God bless." She had been the greeter at her church for 50 years. After that, "Hi, good morning, God bless," you say, "Oh, do you want to go to lunch?" She'd freeze. What she was doing was a norm, a behavior that she had repeated thousands of times in her life. That was drilled into the brain on this rhythmic, patterned side. So she still had access to that. That wasn't language, which is the construction of a new thought. Accessing language is a different thing than that memory. I know that's a little strange, but we'll get into that more. But this side, this retained on the right, is where we've got some hope. This is what we work with. Next clip, please. Again, there's two there. So the amygdala, this red part that's kind of right in there, is the fight or flight. This is the protection center of our brain. This is where there's not a logical filter for this. There's just action. There is just response. This bypasses the frontal lobe of the brain, okay, where we interpret, where we run it through our logic filter, all of that. This amygdala is a part of the brain that just is there to keep us safe, okay? So it senses danger, it prepares, it gets ready to respond. If you think about a threat, and the example I've used is if we suddenly heard a loud bang and we all went, oh, it was just a backfire. Okay, let's continue with our conversation. Is anybody still super elevated for me saying that? We've all got a fully functioning brain. We're able, our logic, our natural calming senses are there. If there was the loud bang, even saying that phrase that I said to demonstrate, some with dementia would stay escalated because they don't have the self-calming ability and this amygdala fired. So when the amygdala fires, it's releasing testosterone and your pupils are dilating and your stomach stops digesting. This is not stuff we have control over. This is our autonomic nervous system kicking in. So, your vision narrows, all these things. We want to keep people out of this state. That's what I can help you understand. That's what I can help you find some ways to keep our loved ones out of an amygdala-triggered state. So if you go home with one thing today, it's how do we keep our people feeling safe and not escalate it to that? Go ahead. So this picture is the first one I'll show you of two, of cross sections of two brains. These were two men that died at roughly the same age, same body size, same education level. One died from a vehicle accident. The bottom one died of advanced Alzheimer's. What are a couple things you notice? Just shout out.
Size.
Size is different. All right, you gonna pick a candy?
Oh gosh.
All right, we've got lots of choices.
The bottom
I'll
one's
close my
missing.
eyes.
Okay.
The bottom one's missing that piece in the middle. Is that the amygdala?
Yeah. Oh, no, that's not the amygdala, but here, you get that.
Okay.
So here's another thing. We'll talk about that a little later. Color is a little different.
Oh, it's different color. It's not
Yeah.
missing? Okay.
Well, no, but it is missing.
Okay.
You're very right, but also look at the bottom one's darker.
Yeah.
It's just smaller in size. The gaps are bigger. Okay, so this is the learning and memory center of the brain. This is where oh mom, it's just a click on the iPhone, come on, it's easy. Or hey, I got you this great new remote control for your TV, you're gonna love it. Okay? If her learning center there is that depleted or nearing this, maybe this is gonna work.
That's not working.
Nope, not gonna work. Okay, the bottom one, if there's that big gap, gosh, no wonder it's hard to learn something new. The immediate recall. We all worry if we walk into the room and go, why am I here? Oh my gosh, I have dementia. Everybody's done that from what I hear. I know I have. That's not it. We do keep fewer things in our short-term memory as we age. We're at our peak in our 20s, so it's kind of cool that it just goes down from there. But it's the accumulation of these things that is dementia. So immediate recall, what time are we going to dinner? Well, 4 o'clock. Hey, what time are we going to 4 o'clock? 3, 4, 5 times. The repeated questions. Those aren't staying because the capturing vessel, the space isn't there to capture the detail. Recent events go away. That's not safe. The attention to detail or focusing on something, if you're like, hey, look at this picture, and then kind of go over there. something they've loved, that huge fish they caught, but then they just kind of drift away from it. That gets harder. Relationships. Thankfully, my father still knows who his family is. So grateful for that. Sometimes, I know you. Oh, I'm your daughter. No, you can't be. Those kind of things. Also, relationships of items or activities. Somebody may stir the coffee with their pen or something, or try and use a fork to cut the food, or different things. The relationships between objects can get confused. One woman would read the newspaper upside down, but she would sit with it for an hour and turn the pages. So that's this hippocampus area. Things that are preserved are your long ago memories. My dad one night kind of confused my brother for an old buddy of his and was talking to him about when they were in their 20s. And thankfully my brother knows this stuff from me, and he just rolled with it. And my dad had this great visit with Mike from years ago. And so that was wonderful. Confabulation is an interesting one, and I'm going to want to know if anybody's had this. Do you feel like your loved one's lying to you?
Yes.
Making stuff up? All right, pick a candy. Give me one example.
The doctor didn't say that.
The doctor didn't say that. Okay, what's one for you? What's something that they...
Made up.
A story that they made up or something?
Oh, just that they were visiting someone that's been dead for a long time, Aunt Louise.
Okay. Good one. Who's over here? Did somebody over here say
I
that?
know, but I can't remember.
Okay. Hey, perfect.
I know it's not dementia.
So, confabulation. Yours is a little more what I'm talking about here. Confabulation is, again, we're trying to look good, right? We don't want to look like something's wrong with us. So, we're pulling some details that we can access. They may not be related. Oh, I loved that lunch with that good-looking guy in the red truck by his cabin at the lake. What? And this was actually one that somebody shared in one of my classes. She's like, Mom, what are you talking about? Well, she realized she had taken her mom for lunch in her pickup truck and looked at the water. And there was a truck near them, but they'd sat and had lunch there. Her mom was pulling some data together to try and show up and be there. It didn't make sense. It wasn't and she wasn't trying to lie. She was trying to connect. She was trying to be present when things just aren't working or connecting in there. There's this picture of somebody, and it might be in here, of a drawing of somebody, and their brain's like puzzle pieces, and there's pieces in their hand with some missing up here. And people in mid-stage dementia have really said that feels so true to them. I know some stuff's missing, but I don't know where to, and so just trying to connect.
I
Yeah?
just thought of an idea my husband had that does fit that.
Okay.
I got him puzzles to work on.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of puzzles, right? And he loved it. He started in working on them, and the whole middle was missing. And I said, "What's wrong with those pieces? Are you having trouble?" And he goes, "No, Barnes and Noble mixed up my box. They totally took out all the middle pieces. I have to take it back now."
Very much,
He did that
yes.
for 5 puzzles. They took out my middle pieces.
And those are much harder to do. They don't have the straight edge. They don't.
Right,
Yeah, but he didn't want to look
right.
dumb or wrong or bad, or he was just trying to. Yeah. So confabulation. Yes, people may lie. Typically in dementia, they're just trying to grab something among this confusion that's going on in their brain, and the details may not make sense together, or they might fill in something that doesn't really fit. It's rarely, because they've lost those parts of the brain, a manipulative attempt. Okay, that part of the brain's gone. So emotional memories are stored. So again, this rhythmic part of the brain that I talked about, that stores emotional memories, the feel-goods, and also the difficulties. When I talk with families that are early on in the dementia, and I've got a daughter who's just livid at her dad, I really try and say, this is hard, I understand you, but that part of the brain could build a new memory. We don't want them to emotionally feel unsafe with you, to emotionally hang on to that battle? Can you shake it off, set that aside, and show up differently emotionally, because they won't have the logic that that was a bad day. They're going to have the emotional memory that she's mean to me. Okay? So the brain starts functioning differently and isolated. Motor memories. Doing things like brushing the hair, eating. Even if you can't do some things that seem like they'd be easy, a lot of times the bigger muscle things or things we've done for a long time do stay. So that's another thing. Dance. I had a woman who was nonverbal. She would smile all the time, but nonverbal. We learned that she taught piano. Well, we sat her down at the piano, and she, oh, no, I can't. But she laced her fingers right into the keys, but she wouldn't play. So the guy from the kitchen had sheet music at home. He brought in, she's like, I have no music or something. And I guess she was a little verbal, now that I'm replaying it in my head. Brought in the sheet music, and she went, then he sat down next to her, and she played beautifully. This woman couldn't dress herself in the morning, but her hands remembered the music. So that motor memory can be there. So, all right, next. This is a different part of the brain that is, and I'm sorry, I don't have it on here. It is I don't know. I can't say exactly what region this is. But this is where language and sound come from. With dementia, somebody may be aged where hearing is less, but it is not a symptom of dementia. Language loss is a symptom of dementia. So we don't need to just get louder. We need to think about the language we're using, the pace we're delivering the words. So you see the circled area, that's where sound is, and it stays pretty much the same. It's not dramatically reduced in size, that kind of line or tube down the middle. Now at the bottom, where it's atrophied, where it's darkened, where the blue arrow's pointing, that's where language is stored. So the loss is there, not in the volume, the hearing. So another thing that happens in perception, so there's the language versus hearing, is focus on a task versus social. Becomes very different. Where we can be playing bingo and chatting with our friend and eating a meal, the bingo would be the task. And if you then want to talk to them about something other than bingo, that's an entire shift in focus, and that takes a lot of brain functioning to do. They say one of the best things we can do for our brain in normal life is do a picture puzzle while having a conversation with somebody. They've actually wired up people's brains to see where the activity is, and that fires everything because you're doing visual, you're inverting top, bottom, and figuring things out. Man, that is really active. In a brain with dementia, it can't do that many things. So, focusing on a task. I would have a woman walk to dinner, and she'd be walking with me, and then I'd say, oh, look at the bird, and she'd just freeze. And then she'd look at the bird, but she couldn't do both things. Okay? So if somebody has a harder time shifting, think about that. Peripheral vision, and I have something for an exercise after if you want. Tim's son was trying these earlier. These are, tanning bed glasses, but if you think about it, if you've ever worn these, and you're welcome to borrow them, this is about what vision will wind up being like. So all this information, I see my hand there. None of this is information I've got. So, they're here. Does anybody want to take a look through them, or they'll be available after? So peripheral vision narrows. That's also depth of vision. So if that camera's over there, I'm not going to know it. Or if you come at me from across the room, I may not know you're here till you're about 5 feet out. So we want to think about how we approach people. Beautiful couple at the community I worked at, she would come and she'd lay her hand on his shoulder and he'd start her. And she would just feel so sad. And I said, come around in front of him, because he was in a wheelchair at that point. And she would come, she'd go low, she'd say, hey, Mom. And he'd be like, oh, lovely. He'd been living there for a year before I went to that community. And nobody had advised her or informed her that he didn't know she was coming from behind. It was something out of nowhere, and it spooked him. And this loving, loving, loving couple were having that. When she came around front, it was delightful because he knew she was there. It wasn't surprising. Okay? So we want to have somebody know that we're there before we're just on top of them. Or, leading around from the side. Don't want to do that. So I always kind of approach from, hi, how are you? And even getting lower can be really good, especially more advanced dementia, because this is, hi, how are you? A little intimidating. You kind of feel like they're over, and if your vision's narrow, I'm filling up your whole area of vision. Okay. Word comprehension, like I said, it's the words, not the volume. Nouns are the first to go in dementia. Nouns are kind of important. Hey, can you give me the thing that does the one that does this thing? But the word pen may not be there. This isn't 100%, but it's pretty parallel. What they're able to produce in their words is what they're comprehending in their words. So if they can't come up with pen, it's likely they're not understanding your nouns either. Okay? By mid to later stage dementia, 1 in 4 words gets dropped. So please come with, if you start writing out sentences, you can really see, wow, so fewer words we start to talk about. My mom would always say, hey babe, we're gonna get dressed and then head out to the store because we're gonna go to the nursery after. And it was the way they'd always communicated. Let's give each other all the details. She learned that she said, hey babe, let's get your shoes on. Have you got your wallet and your sunglasses? All right, let's go. Oh, where are we going? Going to the nursery. But all that detail up front, he couldn't handle. So where she thought it was generous and respectful to give him the data, she had to learn that for him, it was kinder to break it down. Okay? Physical sensation and preferences change. So one woman who had always worn denim all the time, and I live in my denim, hated the texture. She just started hating it. She wanted fuzzy interior sweatpants. The temperature control, those kind of things. Music might change. They've been listening to one thing and they don't like that anymore. They want to go back to what they were listening to in high school. There's all sorts of different preferences that change, so we need to just be attuned to our person as we go. Next slide, please. All right, so that's a lot of what's actually chemically, structurally changing in the brain and a bit of what it does. This next is, how does it change their perceptions and abilities and experience a little bit more in depth? Oh, yes, this is the picture I was talking about, the puzzle. Can you imagine what that would feel like? You're like, okay, I know I've got these pieces, but wow. My empathy, I almost tear up every time I see this picture. So, executive functioning, sensory awareness, self-care and regulation. We've already touched on a few of those, but we're going to go more in depth. Executive functioning, do you guys see where we are? It includes logic. This happened because of this. My stomach hurts because I ate too much at Thanksgiving dinner. She's mad because there was bad traffic. Those things go away pretty early. Impulse control. The person who was cooking something and reached right across the open flame to grab the olive oil. They were focused on one thing, the olive oil, and not sensing the whole surroundings of things. Working memory, which is how we put one step in front of the other, how we know, I've got to grab my purse and my sunglasses and the keys are over there, and then, yep, got my shoes by the door. That whole stuff that we do every day, that's gone or going away. Or even having big chunks that gap in it. Leaving the house literally in underwear, yep, had that happen with a client one time. Had shoes on, had the purse, didn't have pants on. And there was just a gap in the working memory. Sense of time or place. Who's got somebody who doesn't know what season it is, or whether it's breakfast or dinner? Yeah, what's your experience?
Quite a few different ones, but
Okay.
the last few times she thinks that it's 1964.
Okay.
Three different visits in a row.
Great. What year was she born?
40.
Okay. So, with dementia, we kind of progress backwards. I don't know if you've ever heard that having somebody with mid to later stage dementia is kind of like having a 3-year-old. There's a lot. We start to age backwards, and we lose our current memory. Mirrors can become difficult for people with dementia, or the relationships I was talking about earlier. They can begin to see themselves and be living in kind of the 18 to 24-year-old range is the most dominant. So who were you in high school? Who were you in your early adulthood? Well, that sounds like about what she's going back to. So the mirrors, if you think you're 23 and you look in a mirror and you've got gray hair and wrinkles, that can be immensely distressing for some people. Some with dementia have no problem with it, but there are people who, that's really upsetting. My dad, on his rougher days, has first thought that I'm my mom, and we do look a lot alike, but I'm a little bit more age appropriate for where he's seeing himself these days, okay? So you can't be my daughter, I'm only 30, right? You gotta be my wife, my girlfriend. So those things can happen sometimes where there's something trying to put the pieces together and misidentification of relationship because they don't have the sense of time. Also place, knowing what you're supposed to do where gets more difficult. Sleeping all the time in the chair versus, well, I don't want to go to that room, it's dark for the bedroom. Knowing where they're living, those things can get disoriented. Some sensory awareness that changes, smelling, hearing, touch, all those. Body position. My dad's been like this in the chair a lot lately. He has no idea. He's good. He's comfortable. We need to think about the fact that's not good for his organs. That's not good for digestion. That's going to hurt his back. Okay? So we and the beautiful caregiving team, he's in an adult family home now, work on that. But he's good with it. He doesn't see anything wrong with it. Ability to locate or identify pain. In a memory care community, or when somebody's on, say, hospice or something, the bathing is very important because it's where you can do a body check just quickly. And there may be a big old wound on their leg that they don't even know about. Okay, so you want to do skin checks. We had a gentleman who, when the woman went to bathe him, was just bruised and battered here. We found out that he was turning into his room too quickly. He was bonking his shoulder every single time, so our maintenance guy patted the corner. But he didn't even know it was happening. Or somebody might say, oh, what hurts? And it just hurts. We need to then get investigative if it's a stomach or a body or a leg. It can be hard for them to tell us what's uncomfortable, that there's just pain. Hot and cold. Sensing the right clothing for the weather. This is part of where showers really get difficult for people with dementia because the sense of their drops, they can say is very startling or feels like pins and needles, I've been told. And hot can feel cold, cold can feel, oh, you're gonna burn me. And it's actually very tepid water. So those types of things change in sensory. The peripheral vision we talked about, slower to either scan things and take a sense of what's going on or shift from task to social, social to task. When there was a community where a woman was playing bingo and the caregiver came from behind, handed her the pill, said, oh, take your meds before dinner time. It totally went sideways. And when we kind of did the post-mortem and talked through, what do you do next time? She realized, oh, I approached her from behind. I interrupted an activity she loves for something she doesn't like. I didn't give her time to shift focus. Okay, I'm the reason that happened, not her. She started telling me she just blew up out of nowhere. think so. So we rolled it back to learn what had happened. And she did better next time. Taste buds change. And if my folks with dementia could live on ice cream and potato chips, they would be so happy. Because you don't register the other flavors much anymore. Sweet and salty give you enough. And then everything's a little neutralized in dementia. When everything's a little less available, you want those perks, and sweet and salty give them to you. Clearly this is
My
familiar to
mom,
you.
every time I have my mom over, my sister and I are taking turns, she brings a cookie with her.
Yeah.
She won't let me make her lunch, she brings her own, and she always just bringing a cookie, so that's a new thing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. My dad's always had a sweet tooth, believe me.
My mom
Chocolate shake, yeah. But sweet and salty foods, and a lot of the nutrition things at these retirement communities is figuring out how to get people to eat, but not have too high of sodium, doing different things. So there was a woman whose father was pretty non-communicative, and she brought a ginger ale with her, you know, a bubbly, effervescent, and ginger's pretty strong. And they were sitting there talking, and she gave him a sip of it and went, ooh, oh, I like that. And he hadn't said words in a long time, but it triggered something. So this stimulating. I love bringing lemons to somebody who's pretty neutralized in their dementia, and I kind of have them touch it, and then I scratch it and have them smell it, cut it open and make lemonade. It's this multi-sensory thing that tends to engage them. Loving touch can start to feel different. This kind of touch that can be very light and gentle strokes that some people enjoy, and everybody's different, but a generality is that starts to be confusing. There's not enough solid information there. So when somebody progresses with their dementia, may I touch your shoulder? Yeah, is that okay? So if you're going up to somebody, your ankle, your knee, your hip, and your shoulder are good places, and some open palm. Hi, how are you? More than, hey, and this here. But you don't want to do that before they know you're there. Don't just lean in if their eyes are closed. If their eyes are closed, come down here first. I always wake my dad up. I start with his ankles. I'm like, hey, babe, how you doing? And then a hand on his knees. I'm like, hi. And once he knows I'm there, I get my hug. Okay? But think about if they're responding different to little stroking touches, try something that's a little more firm. Can I use your hand once, Beck? Sure. There's a way where, and I can demonstrate this more after, if you go in and you're shaking a hand like this, if you just pivot this way and you're palm to palm, this is called hand under hand, and that is magic for dementia. I'm happy to one-on-one this with you guys afterward. What that does, it actually releases oxytocin, the mama drug, the mama hormone that's happy. It's very calming, and with your hand on the bottom, it's very comforting, but they're still in control. You can help walk somebody with this. You can help feed somebody with this. You can just calm somebody with this. So hand under hand is a wonderful way to connect. All right, self-care regulation. Let's just do a time check. You can tell I've got a lot of details. I could do a 7-hour thing. Self-care regulation gets more difficult. So less ability to begin an activity or stop an activity. They might wash their hands and 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 not know to stop. The initiation, a gentleman in Hawaii was caring for his uncle, and he had an Instagram page that was just delightful. And what he would do is when his uncle would get up and go to the bathroom in the morning, he'd run in and put out his t-shirt, his shorts, his underwear, and his flip-flops. When Uncle came back in, he saw the visual cue and could get himself dressed. If the items weren't out on the bed, he would just kind of sit there for a while. But once the visual information was there that his nephew had laid out, he could get himself dressed. So that initiation, he had a cue for. Fine motor skills goes away, getting a zipper. I have a hard enough time with that, right? Starting some zippers. Teeth brushing, jewelry, those smaller things, and even silverware can get more difficult rather quickly. My grandmother's things were that she wanted me to pluck her chin hairs because she couldn't do the tweezers. Sequencing. I use the make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich example of how many steps do you think it takes to make a sandwich? Anyone? 4, I heard? What else? So, the process, the guy had the bread, the peanut butter, the jelly, the plate, the knife on the counter. And he was stuck. Getting the piece of bread out of the bag was step 1, and then he was rolling. Okay? But he couldn't figure out what the first step was, even with all the items there. So a simple cueing of, well, let's get the bag open. Oh, and then he was off and running. So little supports, that's sequencing. Response time is slower. That's almost bigger for driving than people saying they're going to get lost. It's the response time. This is where driving longer than you should is so scary. Because that's the unexpected and how we can respond to it for the safety of a child running in front of our car, somebody turning in front of us, those kind of things. Things that we retain are cued activity, like getting the bread out of the bag and letting him make the sandwich, laying out the clothes so the guy could be successful. He was able to do something for himself, he felt like. That's got to feel good. So cued activity, the doing part. Once somebody gets into something, my friend's Thanksgiving dinner, mom could no longer prepare the whole dinner for the big family. They tried doing it without her 1 year, and she was devastated. She cried the whole night. So they came to me, I said, well, her identity was taken away. This was her thing. Let's try, and there was a family event before the next Thanksgiving, but I said, let's give her some stuff to do. You couldn't even say make the mashed potatoes. That was beyond her at that point. But a bowl of water, a scrub brush, and a bag of potatoes, she could do that. And they said, okay, let's peel them. She could do that. So we gave her the steps and that cued activity and doing it. Once she got into it, she was able to keep going. And she was so happy. The bigger motions, like I said, brushing your hair, shaking hands, hugging, those typically stay. It's the little, putting on makeup that's going to get harder. Winding your watch, those kind of things. And muscle memory action. There's a thing called proprioceptic. It's the messages that are cued when you do a motion. So somebody who's not self-feeding, I'm able to do a few of these hand under hand cues, and often they'll start then feeding themselves because that reminder system has been woken up. Rather than bringing a spoon to somebody's mouth, taking everything away from them, let's try and have them keep doing it themselves. And these are later stage dementia things. Bathing gets forgotten. First of all, it may not feel very good. I may have a weird temperature sense. The room might be cold. But also, I don't smell much anymore. I don't have a sense of time passing. So for all of these reasons, I don't need to bathe. It's been 3 weeks. It can really be an issue. And again, for skin safety and things, it's important. And for our ability to be cozy and close. Need for sensation can become extreme. Grabbing at things, and one of the things that can be very uncomfortable for family is the places that retain sensation are hands, palms of feet, your lips, so bringing a lot to your mouth, and your privates. They retain sensation. So I was at the house the other day, and the woman sitting next to Dad had her hand up here under her shirt. That's going to happen, okay? It's not always comfortable for us, but that's why it's happening, is they need some sensation, and that's where the sensation is. Maybe she's not feeling it here, or just, yeah. Okay, next one. I love this little guy. This is the fight or flight, okay? So the amygdala equals alarm. This is back to that little red spaces in the brain. Our primitive brain kicks in. Is the concept of fight or flight fairly familiar to folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, okay. So that, where we're not logically thinking through. We've just heard something or something startled us, and the body responds, not our logical thinking brain. It's its job to keep us safe. Now, safe in dementia isn't just safe from a dinosaur. It's safe from embarrassment, loneliness, frustration, feeling like you made a mistake. So part of what we want to do to keep this amygdala calm is set them up for success. Don't give them a white glass on a white table on a white tablecloth with a white chair and a white floor. The contrast, they can't see it. If you have a white tablecloth, get a blue plate. The white chair cushion on a white floor, go away. They've got to see the contrast. So setting them up for success, helping them know what they're supposed to be doing where and at what time. Dad would come out in June or July, a really hot day, when he was dressing himself with one of his turtlenecks and a sweater on, and Mom and I were in a tank top and shorts. Oh, well, let's put the clothes in his visual that are what he should be wearing that day. Let's help him be successful. And we got a little rack by the bed, and Mom would start putting things out that were more reasonable for the weather. And then he'd grab those. Our sympathetic nervous system, hormones, they flush. Well, when we realize we're safe, that all filters out, that flushes out much more quickly. Because we've got logic, we can understand that we're safe. The person with dementia doesn't have that. It just takes some time for it to work its way out, okay? It takes way more time than it does for us. Heart rate, breathing, blood pressure, our temp goes up, all of those things. And in dementia, it just takes it wearing off, pretty much. So if they've been triggered, we can't just make them feel safe and it's going to work all of a sudden. It's still going to take some time to come out. So I think about a green, yellow, red light. Green is like things are going good. Yellows, you're starting to see them a little agitated or frustrated. Pay attention there. Don't let it get to red, or we got a long time on our hands or a big situation. Okay, so paying attention to the possibilities that they're starting to get uneasy. All right, so here's what we can do. We're going to dive into this a little more, and go for the next slide, Mom. We're at 11, so yeah, we'll get about 15-ish minutes more, and Q&A, again, hop in as you come up with things, but we'll definitely have time to talk at the end. In dementia, we want to be creative. What worked yesterday, what worked 10 minutes ago, may not work now. Maybe it'll work for months. You don't know. So we have to be willing to try different things out and see what's working. Foods. We had tried all these different things for my dad, and he just wasn't eating. There was a chicken, apple, walnut, pecan salad thing that my mom made. He would always eat that. So that's what he got. We just always had a big batch of it ready. And then suddenly he didn't want it anymore. Worked for months. And it's overall a pretty nutritious thing, but then, okay, we gotta find something new. Be curious. If you're looking at something and they're paying attention over there, look at what maybe has their attention. If you think they're gonna love this, but they're paying attention to that, watch where their attention is. Think about, well, why is that maybe happening? We had a woman, two people who would do this in the community. And one of them was just anxious. She wanted something to do, and we gave her yarn and different things, and she was fine. The other one, it turned out, Betty, my dear Betty, she got pain medication at 5:15 with dinner. Her morning pain medicine turned out, it seemed to be wearing off more at like 4:30. And she was just uncomfortable. But it took us kind of like, okay, we're observing something, what's going on? And the RN brought her meds a little earlier, and she was much more comfortable. So this was a sign that she was uncomfortable versus somebody else who's just like, I want something to do. So, needing to be a little investigative. And compassion. Those slides of the brain slices, wow, that shows you how different what they're working with is. We're not asking somebody with an amputated leg to run a marathon the same as somebody with 2 legs. That's akin to that. It is dramatic that the brain changes. So, compassion with them. Because believe me, frustration comes easily when you're working with somebody with dementia. Accessing frustration is really common. We also want to be compassionate with ourselves. Because this is a lot. They call it the long goodbye for a reason. We are gradually watching our loved one change and fade away, and it's heartbreaking. So we try and find all the times to connect that we can. So be gentle with yourself. Watch where they focus or what they avoid too. A very bright window behind where you're sitting can be really hard for their eyes, so maybe try changing your position. So many different things. Just observing them is going to give you a lot of information. And you know, why are they doing that? Why are they leaning toward that and away from that? Okay? Be willing to try things maybe several times. Different approaches, considering their perspective, remembering, you know, the vision is less, contrast is less. So soft yellows next to a white, we might see them, but to them it's one thing. So contrast, we want to accentuate that for visual. And pause. Take a break. Even in dementia, they seem to pretty much understand, say, I need to use the bathroom a sec. Get yourself a break, okay? Just stepping away can be so good. If we're being frustrated, if we're triggered, we're going to trigger them. They are reading our emotions much less than our actions. Our actions and our words are that logic side of the brain. What they're able to read are the emotions, the mood. So even if you say, hi mom, love you, come on, let's go, what they're going to hear is stress, not, hi mom, I love you. Okay, so they're reading our emotions, so we need to check ourselves. And in the wild, they talk about how animals will have conflict, and many species, this was specifically with wolves, but they found it other places, within a minute of walking away would do sort of a shake it off. And they think that is kind of getting the testosterone out of their system. Okay, so what is our version of shaking it off? If a caregiver in an adult family home, her shifts were just going bad from the beginning, realized the timing of dropping her daughter at school and getting there, she was always tight on time. So the new agreement was she got to arrive, set her bag down, and take 3 minutes, and then step onto the floor. Okay? Suddenly it was very different. She was having great days with people because she wasn't driving back ready to go. Hi, good morning, let's get dressed. She was able to show up present and calm and tuned in for them. Changed the entire job for her. All right. Checking in with ourselves. Their needs versus what we expect is something we want to look at. So focusing on, pardon me, on us. This is often the task we expected to show up with, the goal, the way we wanted the day to go. Is it just a preference? And actually, would you click the second button again? So paired with, or is there an imminent risk? Is this just the way we'd like to do something? I am not sick, I promise. I have a tracheal issue. Grab lozenge here. Is this just a preference, or is there really a risk right here that we have to do this? Urgent versus important kind of thing. Is this not ideal or convenient right now, or is it a health or safety situation? Bathing is a little bit on this spectrum. If the first day, the second day, the third day they don't want to bathe, that's not particularly convenient, but if it goes on a long time, it does become a health issue. So you're weighing those things, the focus on them. Is it a problem for you that they're wearing mismatched shoes? Or is it a problem for them? Well, they're the same shoe, they're just 2 different colors. They're fine, it's not going to trip them, but if they're wearing one stiletto and one flat, let's get the shoes changed. Those kind of things. Is it irritating or embarrassed for you? Maybe they're a little too loud at the restaurant. Maybe they're eating their salad with their fingers. Are they embarrassed? Are they bothered by it? Or could you just sit and have a nice family meal? There's even these cards that the Alzheimer's Association makes. Do You can set at the edge of your table that says, my loved one has dementia. It's purple, and you just set it there so the servers are aware. It's very gentle and kind, and I tried to get one started at Claire's, and it didn't come together. Maybe after this we will. Alzheimer's cafes are something where you get a restaurant, and the staff knows you get a simplified menu often, the music is lowered, you're in a room without a lot of other things going on, and it's known that everybody there has dementia and they're with their partner. So do whatever you do. It's a way to be out in the world and not embarrassed or concerned or worried of embarrassment. So Alzheimer's cafes are great. And there have been quite a lot of them. They started in Seattle and they're international now. Am I making this a big issue? Or is it just a small issue? So here's what our expectations and habits were. How's it going for them? And then we've always done it this way. Of course we're going to do it this way. Well, maybe that's not working for them anymore. We have to let certain habits and traditions go, but let's find another way that we can do them and build a new norm. All right, so in letting them enjoy succeeding, those feelings of, people with mid-stage dementia who I've spent a lot of time with say, I just feel invisible. The world's happening at me. I'm just not a part of things anymore. I'm just kind of sitting there. So how can we have them still feel their personhood? That's what we want for us and for them. Even folding the laundry, maybe the towels aren't exactly as square as you like them, but they got to do something, okay? All right, next. Approach and awareness. Less is truly more. As you guys may have noticed, I talk a lot. I try not to talk too fast. Hope I'm doing okay. But fewer words is kinder. If you see that they're getting that kind of hazy stare, or their sentences get really shortened, really think about fewer words. Not, let's get the blue shoes because we're going to say, here's your shoes. Short and sweet. Here's your shoes. 3 words. We don't have that 4th lost word yet. Okay, we're bringing it down. 2 options. This is that thing about kind of with a 3-year-old. Do you want the blue one or the green one? Not what do you want? That was a little bit what I tried to demonstrate with the candy. Saying, here, grab one, quick, grab one, just take one. How awful would that be? You're like, oh, what are you trying to do? And I didn't give her a choice. I give her a blue taffy. Somebody may not like that. By the way, if anybody wants stuff, I can pass these around. So it's giving them some choice, but not overwhelming choice. Okay, have any of you spent time with a 3-year-old? Okay, yeah, you know. So what do you want to wear? It's going to be 2 hours before they pick something. But giving them some options so they feel some sense of self. One topic at a time. That thing of get ready, here's where we're going first, here's what we're doing later. That's a lot. To us, it's our day. But to them, think about breaking it down to what is really one topic in their world. And address that, and then pause. And when it's time, move on to the second data set. One responder. Mom and I living with Dad, we needed to learn this one. Because Mom and I click on the same level. We're fast, we vibe with each other, we can read each other. So Dad would say from one room, hey, what's XYZ? And we both respond from other ends of the house. Made him crazy. Or if we're in the car together, we're like, oh, here, it's too much. So, friends with 5 sons, they would go and they would know, I'm doing it for this first hour, I'm the responder. And then they transfer over to Dan. And then they transfer to Steve, and they had an agreement among themselves who was on Mom for that time. And it was way easier on her. And they knew, hey, I'm listening for it right now, rather than 3 people answering at once. I think that's hard on all of us, right? So much of this stuff isn't rocket science, and it's actually a way that the whole world would be nicer if we all treated each other this way. But with dementia, when you have such lower capacities, we really need to attend to these things. Please show me, don't just tell me. You might know this as a fourth grade teacher. Humans, we talk and talk and talk. The first way our brains process information is through our eyes, actually. That is our primary intake. So for people, and of course there's exceptions with vision things, but if we hear somebody call our name, we don't do this. We turn and look to where we heard our name. We want to think about visual. The way it processes in our brain, it is our first sensor, it's our strongest sense, and it bypasses the language loss. Okay? So, are you hungry or thirsty? Are you cold? Just start pairing your words with some visual cues. Hey, let's go. Easy stuff. But what a kind thing to do to somebody who's struggling to understand and track. Give them a little bit more info. Hey, are you tired? Yeah, let's go do that. But we're going to get up. Okay? So just start thinking about where you can add a little bit of visual cue in with what you're trying to relay. And John Wayne, gotta love him, talk low, talk slow, and don't say too much. So, all right, next. Our approach and our awareness. This is my dear Betty White. She was, and the family has approved me to use her name and everything. She was a resident at Rosewood Court where I worked, and the love of my life. We just bonded for whatever reason. So, touch is so valuable. All right, so approach and awareness. Check yourself. Are you expecting a call in the next 2 minutes? Maybe you even wait to go in with them. Get that call and then go in. Are you thinking about 7 other things? All right, can you take a second, settle it, and show up and be present? You want to just bring in the calm energy, because that's what they're going to read first. I'm safe. Oh, I'm here with you. Okay? If you're paying attention to your phone and shouting to somebody in the other room and kind of putting their jacket on them, that's happening at them, not with them. Okay? The phrase of they'll remember how you made them feel, this is so valid. Everybody in the community loved me. I was the activities director. I brought snacks. I brought in the music, the art. So the mood around me was fantastic. They didn't know my name. They didn't know when I was there, but there was just this energetic. And Lucy, who did the showers and was one of the most beautiful humans I've ever met, delightful, kind. If anybody was going to tolerate a shower, she was the one to do it. Some people just, because they didn't like showering. So emotionally, they assigned bad to her. So how they made you feel, even if she did it all right, they didn't like showering, so they didn't like this lovely person. So, how you made them feel. We want to show up and have them feel loved, important, cared about, part of things. These comments are all things I've heard directly from people I've worked with. And the first one, I can read your feelings, yet your words are blurry today. That one gives me chills. It was so, your words are blurry today. Wow. Feeling I matter and am seen feels safe. We were talking about what has your days be good or bad, and this was one of the comments. And this guy just chuckled. He had a new caregiver, and he said, I like how she does with me. That was genius. That was just beautiful. And you helped me not make mistakes or mess up. Because we were setting things up. Oh, let's put that over here, not in where they couldn't see it. Makes me think about when somebody's at the table and their plate's here and their glasses here, they may not even be able to see their glass. So I hear these caregivers say, well, they're not getting their liquids. Well, put it where they can see it. Think about what their range of vision is. But these comments directly from people living with dementia are so valuable to me. All right. Help me feel that I matter. Human beings need a sense of purpose, a sense of being wanted, and a sense of self-identity. Not, again, just letting things happen at them. So, next. Using this, we can say, come on, please. I know the word sincere may seem a little unnecessary here, but we gotta check ourselves. Please, hey, thank you. I really appreciate that. I would say, Dad, can you please come with me? Versus, Dad, come on. Please and thank you speaks to the brain of I'm safe, I'm seen, I'm part of things. Okay? Say, hey, so yes or no questions aren't very good. The dementia brain, again, defaulting to trying to keep them safe, is going to say no 98% of the time. It's a power word. It's a control word. No narrows it down, and now I know what's happening. Yes is wide open. So it's not that they don't want to do anything, but how are we framing it? So you could really help me with choosing a color in the room. Come on. Not, hey, would you help me? Because you might get a no. And I'm horrible at this part of it. I am a yes, no questions girl. I really have to work on this one. But something that's inviting or helping them feel like they're having an option, but you're guiding that option, is going to give you better success. Which one of these do you like best? Or do you want a hamburger or spaghetti? And then they can choose between those two things. Another part of that is, do you want a hamburger or something else? This is a good investigative thing. No, something else. Okay, do you want a bowl of cereal or something else? No, something else. Do you want soup? Yeah, soup. They may not be able to come up with a noun, but they may have a sense of what they would like. So give them some data to choose from. Either two choices or that, or something else is a way to continue and engage them. And then you kind of keep digging around. All right. Next. So this is how we want to have our people feel, right? This picture just soothes me. I don't know who she is. Grabbed it off Google. But that's what we want our people to feel, right? So having them feeling a purpose, being wanted. How would it feel to have the world just being done at you? Because the person caring for you is so tired. They've got a dozen things on their plate because you're not able to pay the bills anymore or help with the laundry or do the grocery run. So they're exhausted, so they're like, just, sit there, watch TV. I'm going to get these things done. That's a very disconnected feeling, and it actually makes our job harder because then you're dealing with that saddened dynamic, that detached dynamic. So anything, Dad pushed in the cart at the grocery store for a number of years. Couldn't do a whole lot else, couldn't walk that far if he didn't have the cart, but he was helping Mom. It was fantastic. All right, next. So this is my family. This is Jake, this is Dad, that guy over there, and my mom back there. So I will remember how you made me feel. This is what we want. My dad has been a joyful, dynamic, interesting guy. He has a lot of flat days now. But we still hug him. He still says, hey, babe. The conversation may be word salad. We've got to get to the Tuesday because over on the spreadsheet was yeah. Or he was really urgent to show me something. He says, well, I got the 3 from here, and then I had them. I said, well, what did you do with them? He says, well, I put them back. I said, great. I had no idea where his head was. But I was there with him. I was able to be in the moment with him. When he had the moment there, he thought my brother was Mike, his childhood best friend. And he said, well, what was that thing? And he goes, well, remind me, what was her name? And then Dad went on with the story. So he was able to cue him. We listen for tone. We listen for the mood, the pace, the energy. One of the things we really want to do that I realized I didn't have in here, and I'll wrap up with this, is mirroring our loved one. If they are really down and just kind of sad, and you come in and you're like this, are they going to feel connected and seen? You go, wow, you're really having a rough day today. Yeah, I am. Well, what would help? And then you start to bring yourself up just a little bit. Well, I'd love to go see some leaves. Want to go for a drive? Yeah, let's go for a drive. It happens so fast. Again, last story, there was a woman in the memory care I worked at, And every day around 4:30, 4:45, Sandy would come down the hallway, like, oh, what am I doing? And the kitchen was here, and the dining room was here in the hallway. And what am I supposed to, this is just stupid, really hot and just agitated, and honestly, she'd start to take her clothes off, which, and so I'd been there for a while, and I saw everybody go, no, Sandy, you can't do that. Or, oh, Sandy, go to your room. So I figured, let me try this thing. And I go, wow, you're really mad, aren't you? She goes, yeah, I am. I said, well, what are you so mad about? She goes, well, what am I supposed to be doing? I said, I don't know. Let's go down here and find something. And we were walking with our arms around each other's waist down the hall, less than 15 seconds. Where honestly, it would often be 10, 20 minutes of drama. But she felt seen, she felt attended to, she felt like I was there with her. So mirroring that person so that they feel present with us, that they feel like we're a team. Okay? Thank you guys for joining. Let's do questions and stuff, whatever you've got. And by the way, if this is valuable, as you can tell, I could go for hours. There's next stage of stuff we can get into. There is repeat of this if you have people who want to come. I just want people to have this information. Okay? So any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I had an interesting situation.
And if everybody could speak up a little bit, I'm lucky with my.
Oh, okay. I had an interesting situation. When my husband first started developing symptoms, we were working at it, we were getting diagnosed, we were doing all this stuff, and I was right on board with everything, and I went to my neurology office appointment with him, and she was asking me, what kind of hardships are you having, and I just burst into tears, and I said, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I said, I'm at my wit's end, this is terrible, this is horrible, I can't do it. And she said, well, I think you're at the point where you need to have the next step, which is looking into placement for him.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, who does that for me? And she looked right at me and she said, well, you decide. And that was an eye-awakening for me. I said, what? When people have heart attacks in their home, the ambulance comes and gets them. When they, have this, the family brings them to the ER. I said, I have to figure this out?
And do all the research. That's what your neurologist said?
That's what all the doctors
So
say.
sorry.
All the doctors say that. And so that's something that people need to be aware of. There isn't a team that comes to your house and says, let's take care of your patient and get him into the long-term care. You're the one that decides when your body can't handle it anymore. That was really an eye-opener.
You, the caregiver?
Yeah, the caregiver side.
Yeah, and that's a big spectrum of stuff. A couple thoughts. She worked with my dear friend Lisa Satin, who's a housing placement specialist and salt of the earth, wonderful woman. And she, for no fee to the family, helps people find the right thing for their lifestyle, personality, economics, geography, all of that. So it's a really great industry that's out there of housing placement. Please do not go online and click on a place for mom. I don't badmouth people, but that company is not who you want to work with. There's so many good options. And once you click on their website, if they get any data on you, nobody else can work with you. Like, just a place for mom, please set them aside. Okay? Lots of great other resources around. You need to decide. There are things like when you're going to bring care into the home. Are the biggest challenges schedulable? Is toileting an issue? Well, right now they're getting data toileting schedule. Every 2 hours, they're bringing him to the bathroom because incontinence is starting. That's a great method. That's sort of schedulable. Shower days are schedulable. Other things are not. Exhaustion episodes or whatever. When it's not schedulable, that's when maybe you need more help. If the things you need are to get out to the grocery store, to help with some laundry, to prep some meals, maybe having a caregiver come in the home is a great option at that point because you can get 4 hours twice a week of respite. That's great. If you can figure out where your breaks need to be. But if it's kind of an all-the-time, spontaneous unknown, which is where we got to, we were aware of Dad 24/7, and there were times that it was 3 or 4 days of literally 24 hours a day needing to be attentive. We couldn't do it. Now we have an extraordinary care team that do it 3 minutes from our house. So we made that very difficult decision, even with my knowledge and 2 of us, to place my dad in an adult family home. It'll never not tear at my heart, but it's been so good. Mom made the phrase, I'm telling you, we were driving a month ago and she said, I get to just love him. Oh my gosh. And he gets it, he feels it. He isn't distressed when we go to leave. When we show up, he's like, hey babe, hi, okay, all right, see you soon. And she gets to just love him. It's a lot. You had something?
Yeah, I have a couple. So my mom, we don't actually know when she was diagnosed. She's been really independent. She's 81 now. She just retired in April. She had 3 car accidents before we got her car away from her and realized something was going on. So we need to know, like, I've started taking over her medical and taking her to doctor's appointments and all that, but how do we know what stage she's in? Does that matter? Do I need to push for an MRI? I just finished doing like the healthcare directive and healthcare agents with her.
Good, good.
It's very new for us, but I think it's been going on with her longer than we realized.
2 to 8 years is sort of the standard that when people start thinking back, once there is a diagnosis, if there is, they start going, oh wow, there were signs back then. It is always going on a lot longer than we realize. So that's not unusual. My brain
Sorry,
Cracker
I
Jacks.
asked
Well, no, it's great. One thing I want to say is talk to her bank. Let them know there's cognitive
Oh,
decline.
been there.
Okay, great. Because banks can put a check on things and just keep a little better eye on it.
My sister took that over, so.
Yeah. Actually, Mom's bank had heard about my dad, and there was an unusual expense for her, and she called me and said, hey, because we've known each other, and Mark called me and said, just want to check in, is this? I'm like, Mom's great, this is totally legit, thank you for checking. But how wonderful to not have a caregiver writing checks they shouldn't be, or those things that can happen. I'm mixed on diagnosis. Medically, there are medications that can help slow the progression, almost a vast majority of the time. Depression is part of things with dementia, and treating some depression can be very valuable. Melatonin can be enough for sleep at night. Some people need trazodone or something else. Getting good sleep at night is very important, and not just napping constantly throughout the day where you're not going to get good sleep at night. There's all these different things. The process of getting a diagnosis is not a straight line. Very little is 100%. The science is evolving, the medicine is evolving, and blood tests and things are getting closer. But at this point, we're going to have you go through this test that sees which parts of your brains are working. It's called, the most common is a MOCA. You draw a clock, you draw the shadow box, you identify the elephant. All right, clearly some people have seen this.
Yeah.
What that looks at is, how is your logic area of your brain? How's your sequencing area of your brain? How's your memory, your short-term memory? So it's broken out very specifically for those of us who know how to read those tests to understand where your deficits may be. That's one of the diagnostic tools. Your reporting to a doctor is going to be a big part of it. So keeping a journal of generalities and progression of things, that can be important information. But there isn't a boom, check the box, you guaranteed got this. Even with frontal temporal, it is accumulation of symptoms and boxes in one column that they're checking that say, you're pretty much that. But these aren't black and white. The testing can be immensely distressful for the person with dementia. Sometimes they're fine with it. Sometimes they want the answers. The treatment is not vastly different. Okay? If you have a great primary care physician, ask them what their geriatric knowledge is. Do they work with a gerontologist or a neurologist? Because maybe the PCP that's known your loved one for years is going to have the best foundation for information, but they also aren't going to be the specialist. But if they consult, Swedish does great with this. So they have your one person, but then they have other people they can kind of bounce things off of. But the benefit of having the diagnosis versus the stress of going through it is something you need to weigh. It's your mom? Is there a good primary care that's pretty tuned in, or?
I've just met with her once.
Okay.
We'll be meeting with her again in December.
And if you're interested in any neurological testing, schedule now because you're likely 8 to 12 months out. Okay? We are desperately understaffed in geriatric care.
I think she's had a diagnosis, but
Okay.
now that I have things signed and notarized, I can probably ask.
Yeah. And if you want, my cards are up there. If you want to bounce it off me after, I can look at it with you and kind of explain what some things mean. And again, I am not an expert, and I'm not. I do not keep myself up to speed on the medications because I would know enough to be dangerous. So I can let you know a little bit about things or the questions to ask, but I'm not going to answer your medication questions. Just to be real clear there, there are specialists for that.
Yeah.
But getting the diagnosis, you know she's got dementia. So how do you build the safety mechanisms around her? All of that. Am I answering your question at all? Okay. Okay. A lot of people say you have to have a diagnosis. I'm just, the more and more I'm in this, I'm just not sure you do. Yeah.
The business aspect of the insurance coverage.
Good point.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The business aspect. This
Fair
is my
point.
savvy brother. My business-minded brother. Yes, there is the business and the logistics insurance aspect of it. Long-term care insurance, I don't know why I keep going here. Oh, because my hair. There we go. That'll be better. Long-term care insurance, if you're lucky enough to have it, you qualify by 3 activities of daily living need: dressing, bathing, and making meals, or dementia. But you have to have a diagnosis. Dementia trumps everything else. Also, with a lot of home care being paid, anything like that, dementia trumps the other boxes needing to be checked for how much care you need each day. So that does often require a diagnosis. Yeah, here I'm more from the social, how does your day function, but great point. He's kind of smart, don't tell him I said that.
So when you're talking about home care,
Yeah.
how do you know who's to come and take care of things?
Oh, I've worked in home care. It is an imperfect industry, and it can be wonderful, okay? There are some people who hire somebody through their church. There are some people who only hire RNs, but you can have a CNA license, a Certified Nursing Assistant license, and work for these home care agencies. If the rate is a whole lot cheaper than the others, there's probably a reason for it. I used to work for home care assistants, which is now called The Key. They're one of the most expensive out there, and there was a lot of really good things. Family Resources tends to be quite good.
Is that the name of a company?
Yeah. With a little help is one down. And so there are some good companies out there doing it. The benefit of having a company versus paying somebody under the table, that kind of thing, is if this person gets a cold, if they get a flat tire, the company then helps staff that. You've got somebody there that day, you needed somebody there. There's insurance coverage if anything should happen. There's more training involved. But the cost is $18 to $20 if you're private paying, or somewhere around there, up to $45 to $65 an hour if you're paying an agency. It's a lot. If you are going to work with an agency, the tricks are consistent schedule. Because that person you get in there is going to know that they've got work on those days. And a longer shift is better. Rather than 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, have 4 hours a day, 3 days a week, or 2 days a week. 4-hour shifts are kind of the minimum that you're going to get a consistent caregiver. And you don't want to have somebody new, you have to show them where everything is each time, they don't get to know your person. Those are things you want to ask about. Am I going to have a consistent caregiver? What happens if they call out? You can wind up with a live-in caregiver where somebody's there for, say, 3 days, and then somebody's there for 4 days, and they transfer and they actually sleep overnight and have a room. There are, when there's high medical need, there's 12-hour back-to-back shifts. There's all different ways it can be set up.
What
And-
is a financial issue for a person who needs this kind of care? What do we have in our county?
Not enough.
No, okay.
Yeah, just not enough. There's not, some churches have things together. There are some community programs, but the Alzheimer's Association, they're strapped. They're spread thin. It is really insufficient, I'm sorry to say. One of the things that has worked for some people is like a daycare program where you take turns. And hey, Joe and Steve get along well. They're gonna be at your house today, and I'm gonna go do stuff, and then they'll be at my house tomorrow. And maybe they sit and watch football all day. But it gives somebody a break, and you can pair up that way with a friend. It takes getting creative. I will be forever grateful that my parents were advised to get a long-term care plan years ago, and a plan that they canceled quickly once they realized how good it was, and they fought us for over a year on paying out on. And even that's probably going to run out before my dad does. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
If you're on Medicare, there's some things that kick in too. Because I'm going crazy taking care of my husband, I was already crazy in the beginning. I got myself a therapist, and we were able to pay for it, fortunately. But as of January of 24, Medicare pays for my therapist now. Okay, so it's a big difference for me.
Medicare pays for a mental health therapist or a physical therapist? You? Oh,
For me,
wonderful.
for me, so I don't go, jump off a bridge or something or kill my husband.
Yeah.
Which is more likely, So she's wonderful because, of course, I was nervous about coming here, for example. Yesterday, she knows me by now. She said, take 2 Imodiums, because that's my problem. Take 2 Imodiums and go.
Good for her.
So I'm here.
Yeah.
But she, as of January of 24, Medicare is paying for it. I was paying for it just before myself.
Okay, so.
So you need to look at that, you see. But this is a therapist for me. I have no idea if it would be for my husband or somebody. It's just that I had this therapist. And
So do you have, so when Medicare kicks in for you,
yeah.
and you have to have a certain level of income because of that?
I don't think, no, nobody asked me a thing, because before that, for like 2 years now, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do it myself. But I've always kept my ears open, and as of January of, I'm being redundant, Medicare kicked in and they're paying, so I don't have to pay that anymore. So you might look into that too, if, maybe for yourself, because that will help you too to take care of your loved person, because she does a lot of that to just, well, you could do this or you could do that, that type of thing.
I don't have this knowledge, but I know some people have qualified for Medicaid as well with some cognitive diagnoses.
Mine's just
So
therapy.
Medicare, yeah. The Alzheimer's Association is great in a lot of ways. They're a wealth of information, and part of the way they do that is by soliciting like crazy for funds. So just know that you're going to get on a call, an email, and mailing list if you contact them. But they have counselors for how do I build a plan for this? The guides I had out front, which are this dementia roadmap, talk about steps. The people like Lisa Satin, who I mentioned, I have friends that work for Choice Advisory, which is another very good one, locally owned. They are housing placement, but they also know the home care agencies in the area. They know that they're out networking and getting to know where to go for certain things, who's to be trusted. I've been in this industry 20 years. When I'm at somebody's table and I see one of the brochures that aren't good, I just kind of slide the good ones across the table and say, you'll be in good hands with these guys.
Now, tell me the name of the thing that you said that.
Choice? Oh, the one not to call? A Place for Mom.
And that's an
Oh, yeah,
If you,
but the one that you do recommend.
Choice Advisory,
Choice advisor.
and they are a larger agency. Lisa Satin, who I keep mentioning, is a one-woman shop. Fantastic. Adrienne Miller, you may have seen her things if you go to movies at the Edmonds Theater or in the My Edmonds News. There's a lot of them, and they're.
What about Homage and Everett? How about?
I've heard good things. I have not worked with them directly.
Okay.
I think they are a state-funded. I think Homage is like the social services of Seattle. I think they're in that realm.
What was the name?
HOMAGE.
It used to be
Yeah.
senior services of Snohomish County.
Okay, so senior services. So it is a county. It is a funded, city county funded organization. But those are info sources. Neighborhood senior centers, the Montlake Senior Center, the Shoreline are both fantastic resources. They will often have classes on financial guidelines for how do I do this thing. I've given you a few names of people I trust. My cards are up there. If you want to vet anything by me, I really don't want to badmouth people. The only reason I say don't do A Place for Mom is because they're a database website spreadsheet. They're not personalized. Where you want somebody who knows this area. And the way, if you're looking at placement, the way those people are paid is typically an arrangement with where you move, your person. They're paid a percentage or the first month's rent. Okay? So you are not paying them a dime. This is the way this industry works. I think travel agency was similar or something. But they're honest. There are guidelines and laws they have to go by. So it's a good service. Find somebody you trust. And I'm gonna go with my gut person. If somebody just doesn't feel right, don't go there because this is important stuff you're working with them on. And truly, bounce anything off me. I'm happy to give feedback, and I'm not as in it as I was for years. I started with a downsizing and relocation company for 12 years, and then I worked in memory care and worked in home care. I don't do that as actively right now, but I still know the good people.
You can get reports on the facilities that
Yes.
you check out.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
And you can get state reports on the places that you're checking out.
Oh, okay.
Adult family homes, for example, I used to volunteer as an ombudsman.
oh, you're an ombudsman?
Yeah, for 10
Gosh,
years.
that's so important, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not anymore, but
But that's-
I did that for 10 years, but you can see what kinds of
Ratings.
yeah, what kind of ratings they have, and they usually have a state letter from the social workers going there to do a complaint maybe that's put forth for the record, and they have to go to the home themselves and present that complaint and then try to get it resolved with the
Yep.
owners, and that's gonna be on a letter. It'll show the state side of them, and then it'll show a letter that shows it was resolved, or Washington State.
And all I would add, ombudsmen are extraordinary, do such important work. If you work with one of these people at Choice, you know, my friend Shauna Brown's there, she's extraordinary, Lisa, anybody, they'll do that for you. When you are dealing with somebody with dementia and your life is changing that way, I want you to have less work to do. So that's part of why I advocate so strongly for these placement specialists. Because my gosh, you have such a learning curve already and so much you're dealing with. Let's get the people who are the specialists in this on your side to help you out. So, but those reports are part of what they do. So, yeah.
Get it checked out. It seems like the best thing ever. It's often, going to be good to get it checked out to make
Yeah.
sure that there aren't any complaints against the home, and if there are complaints,
How are they addressed?
how it should show how it was resolved and not resolved.
Yeah, and there's complaints from the community against it, but there's also the state audits where they go in and look at things, and those are available as well. So, yeah.
So you're not thinking of a place for her, you're just thinking of somebody helping.
I have a
Questions?
question.
Yeah.
So in this, because I take my mom to a neurologist and we were given this.
Okay.
And anyways, there's a number in here and I've talked to the lady like 3 different times, but she's in Mount Vernon because I'm looking for like a support group.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and she said, I mean, there's one in Mount Vernon, which I'll probably end up going to, but, I mean, this, and I've left like a message like 3 different times, not knowing I called the same place. Hey, this is Dawn, and,
Oh, yeah.
and she calls me back, she's so sweet, but, you
We're
know,
all here to start one.
where are the support groups? Where
Okay,
do you
so
go?
I do one the third Wednesday of every month with Cozier of Northgate. They've had me coming there for 2 years.
Along with that coach.
Yeah,
Not in Milford.
in Northgate. So that is a every other month in person and then online, and it's open for anyone. COGIR Northgate, or message me and I'll get
Do you
you
ever
the
go to
details.
Willow Creek?
I would, but Northgate's the one who I did one of these presentations there, and then the family said, gosh, can we get together? And it's just a kind of a family roundtable once a month. And we'll have 1 person or 15, we never know, but everybody's welcome. Alzheimer's Association has some. There's a woman I know who runs one specifically for Lewy body dementia. There aren't enough. How many of you are from the church here? How many of you heard about this through the church? Okay. How many of you are my Edmonds News? Okay, great, good to know. I talked with Tim, and if you guys want something, let's figure out something, you know, talk to them. I'm happy to meet somewhere once a month and just kind of see what the pertinent issues are for you at that time. I want people to have what they need. This is hard. But yeah, as far as support groups, Alzheimer's Association, and the Shoreline Senior Center did have some for a while. I don't know if they do right now.
She told me to ask the library.
Yeah, that's probably good.
It's okay.
They're not-
I haven't done it yet. This
Yeah.
is my first.
Well, good. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, senior-focused stuff. The senior centers can be a great resource. But all of this, I mean, I have been blasting this out to people for over a month now. And we've got a nice room full, but Tim and I were hoping we had the overflow room, right? That many people need this information. So, what were you going to say?
Just that the Edmonds Waterfront Center, with
Oh, yeah.
close tie with the senior center, might be a place.
I'm forgetting about the fabulous Edmonds Waterfront Center. Yeah, of course, they're terrific. So, yeah, if anybody,
Edmonds Waterfront Center with their close tie to the senior center might have.
yeah, it used to be the senior center. Now they're under that one umbrella. All right. Any other questions? If you want to talk to me privately, go ahead. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
So glad.
Thank you.
Of course, I have a lot of questions.
Okay,
But
go for it.
I have one. So what do you?
And I did